Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's good to see all of you here in Dahlonega. It's good to see all of those who are over there in Cleveland. I can't see you, but I'm assuming you're there. And also those who are online. Thank you for doing that. Jesus would tell parables. You know, he would just start out his messages and different things by just telling stories and parables. And so I thought this morning I would give a shot at telling a parable. This is not in the Bible, okay, so this is me. But I thought I'd give my, little hand at it to set us up for this message today in the series. So, you're on a trip, and it's a luxury cruise, and you are headed to an exotic paradise when the cruise ship goes down. There are no lifeboats, there is no radio, there is none of the preservers and all of the other things. It's just people in the middle of the ocean. No land in sight anywhere. Now, there are those who cannot swim, and so they immediately panic and they sink immediately. Then there are those of us who can tread water, right? Maybe keep our head above water for a while and maybe make a little bit of motion, but wear out and sink eventually. And then there are those of us who can swim. In fact, among us may be expert swimmers, even Olympic swimmers, even world record holder swimmers. But which direction do you swim? And then among us are some smart people who are able to navigate their way just by looking at the sun and the stars, and so they know the direction. But here's the hard reality. It doesn't matter how well you swim. We all have to fight currents pulling us in multiple directions, waves that are unrelenting, and we're surrounded by predators. And the hard reality is that even the very best among us isn't good enough because no one swims to shore from the middle of the ocean. No one. You see, going to heaven is like that. Going to heaven is like that because even the very best among us just aren't good enough. Now, we're starting the series, and I know that's a really, heavy, morbid. Glad I came to church today. Get an uplifting word. But we're starting this series today called Heaven, Who Goes There? And during the series, I don't want us to focus on heaven. A lot of the times we want to focus on the architecture of heaven, right? And all the elements of heaven and things are going to be there and what's going to be like and all that kind of stuff. I want us to focus on who actually goes there and how do we get there. And that parable that I just told, the little story I told, gives us the reality that some of us are putting our hope, faith, and trust in the wrong things to get us there. Now, the fear of not going to heaven is great motivation to be good, right? But here's the thing. Nobody can really get to heaven based on their goodness. It's an extraordinary reward that is worthy of extra effort, right? And so we love to leverage heaven by saying, oh, look at all the wonderful stuff you're going to get if you'll just work harder, do better, and be good, right? You got to be good to get to heaven. But the thing is, being good just doesn't get us there. And then if you add the threat of hell, right, the alternative, and if you're not good, look what's going to happen. Boy, we really have some power there, don't we? We really have some leverage there. See, there's this fine line between motivation and manipulation. And we try to use the promise of heaven and the threat of hell as motivation to get people to do what they should and ought to do. But sometimes it's just manipulation, where we try to get people to do what we want them to do and what we think they ought to do. And so there's a lot of problems with this good people theory, right? That good people go to heaven. See, here's the problem. First of all, who determines what is good? When we say good people go to heaven, we have this idea of good people go to heaven, right? I mean, we hear this all the time. Good people go to heaven. What do you mean by good people, right? When you go to a funeral, don't you hear that sometimes? At funerals, they said, oh, he was such a good man, such a good man. And that's awesome. I mean, you want people saying you're a good man at your funeral, right? You don't want them to say anything else but they were a good person. Or she's such a good lady. If anybody deserves heaven, she deserves heaven. But who determines what is good? Because, see, there is no universal standard of good. And so if you ever thought good people go to heaven, I mean, this is the truth about heaven. Most people believe that there's a heaven. There was a survey that was done in 2023. Back in 2023, there was a survey done. It's one of the most exhaustive surveys on kind of the faith in America, in the United States. And 71% of people believe that there's a heaven. Not only 71% of people, 4% of atheists who don't believe in God believe that there's a heaven, which I found really interesting. Love to have a conversation with those people. But here's the thing, we all believe that there's a heaven, and by heaven, what do we mean by heaven? We mean a place of idealism. It's perfect, it's great, it's awesome, it's wonderful. It's, it's where everything is as it should be. There's no problems, right? It's just we're at our best, that we finally arrive to being our best, at the best place. And every world religion has a version of it, and so most people believe that there's a heaven, and most people believe that good people go to heaven. Here's the other thing. And most of us believe we're good people. And we're good enough to go to heaven. I mean, come on, right? At least you're better than some people. You might not be perfect, but compared to some, you're awesome. You're incredible, right? And so surely good people going to heaven means you get to heaven because you're good. But here's the problem. Who determines what's good? Because there is no universal standard of good. There's no universal. We could sit in here today and have arguments over what we think is good and what we think is bad, right? It varies generationally. Come on, let's just go way back, right? Ladies, polygamy used to be very acceptable and good. Now, it wasn't good for you, but it was great for the guy, right? And so we've moved on from that. Some of us, there are some who are still holding on and still that would argue today and say, no, it's really good. And they have all their good reasons, and they think it is moral and right, and so it's good. And then, hey, slavery. And I'm not just talking about in our country, every nation, and every culture has had slavery as part of their history. Some still do. Well, then we say, well, that's not good, so we got rid of that. And then there was segregation. And for a while, we thought that was good. But that's not good, right? And then there's child labor. Come on, the kids got to make some money for the family, and they're just helping, and it's really good that you put them to work early so they can learn all the responsibility. And now we look at it and go, that's abuse. That was exploitation. We wouldn't do that. We had manifest destiny, for those who don't remember your history. This idea that God has divinely ordained the United States to go from sea to shining sea, and we just take over. It doesn't matter who the people are that are already there. It doesn't matter what they think about the land. It is God's desire that the Europeaner take it all. And that was good. It was God-inspired. But now we look back and go, I don't think that was good, and we're trying to say, I'm sorry, and make up for it. Right? So generationally, how do you define good? Even within the church, right? There was a time where it was like, hey, we're just going to go convert everybody, make them follow Jesus, or kill them, right? It's called the Crusades. And we just thought you convert or you die. And somebody thought that was a good idea, and that was good. But now we sit there and go, that's horrible. And we're saying that is nothing like Jesus. So generationally, the understanding of good has shifted. And so if we sit there and go, yeah, but we're good, we're going to heaven, it just means nobody before us ever got to go. Right? Or did they? And then it varies culturally. And when I say culturally and nationally, like around different, like in Iceland, did you know in Iceland, almost 100% of babies, when they test them in the womb that have Down syndrome, are aborted. They've almost eradicated Down syndrome in Iceland because when they do the test, if there's a chance it's going to have Down syndrome, we just get rid of them. And they're over there going, and that's good. And there's some of us that are going, that's horrible. Right? So not only nationally, within the nation, right? Because you cannot compare San Francisco to Dallas, Texas, right? You can't compare California to Mississippi. In fact, even here in North Georgia, you cannot compare one community to the other because there are people and groups within the cultures of those communities who would have a totally different standard of good. So when we say good people go to heaven, right? We're good people. Well, who determines good? By whose standard? And get this, you would just say, well, I would determine what's good. It even varies personally because there are things today that you don't think were good, you used to think were good. And you did them and you were okay with it. And now you're not. Or you were good with it and okay with it, but you don't want your kids doing it. And so you can't even look in the mirror and go, I'm the standard, because you've changed. And now you have a standard of good that you don't even live up to. True? Right? So when it comes to good, good is a moving target when you think culturally, generationally, and personally. So when this idea of good people go to heaven, oh, it sounds fair, doesn't it? It sounds fair because surely there would be a good place for people who do good. And if there's a good God, surely God would want good people to go to the... So good sounds good, but it's not good at all. Because not only who determines good, who determines who's good enough? Like what's the line? Is there a minimum amount? Is there grading on a curve? That's what I want to know. We hope there's a curve, right? Is there bonus questions? Is there some way to make up for it? I mean, what percentage? You know, when some of you, you're in college, somebody getting ready to graduate, and that's awesome. And, you know, when C's gets degrees, woo, right? And then there's some coursework that, you know, there are some majors, or at least some fields, some industries, some tests where I think you have to get 100 every single time, okay? If you're my pilot, I want you acing every test, right? If you're my brain surgeon, I hope you aced every test. It's like, man, you got the best surgeon in the world. He got a 71 on everything. It's like, what? I don't think so. But so here's the thing. What's the percentage of good? And so we sit there and go, well, I know I'm not perfect. Don't we all say that? I know I'm not perfect, but I'm good enough. Well, who determines good enough? Right? And what if it's not just that you like aren't good enough? What if you missed heaven by one good deed? You know, what if you got up there and they were just looking at the inventory and go, oh, dude, one good deed, right? And here's the other thing. When it comes to good, are you taking into account our thoughts, or is it just our actions? Our attitudes, or again, just the action? Is it our intentions? Does anybody consider the circumstances, right? I mean, you get to plead the case and go, okay, I know I wasn't perfect, but I'm good enough under the circumstances. I mean, you got to understand my upbringing, the culture I was in, how my parents were. I mean, the idea that good people go to heaven just really starts to fall apart. I mean, it sounds fair, it sounds smart, it sounds good. We kind of, you know, comfort ourselves, but it really falls apart if we just pause to think of how this all just is such a shaky ground, isn't it? I mean, what if you run out of time? Come on, some of you are old, okay? Some of you are close to the end. And what if you just run out of time to make up for what you did that wasn't good? Right? One deed short. It's like the end of the semester happens every year, you know, especially with high schoolers and stuff. It's like you get to the very end of the year and you realize you have to make a 210 on the final in order to graduate. And you're asking for like extra credit. And when they don't give it, mom and dad go up there, write the letter, do the whole thing, and you get your trophy anyway. Like that's how it works, right? No. What if heaven's not like that? What if going to heaven is you run out of time and you don't have a chance to undo it? What do you do now? Okay, what if you're old? What if you're sick? What if you don't have enough time? You did so much bad stuff. Is it worth even being good, or are you now just good for nothing because it's not going anywhere? You're not going to do anything. It's not going to help. Do you just show up for class and keep doing the coursework when it's not going to help you graduate? You see, God determines, and the Bible discloses what is good and who is good enough to go to heaven. So I know many of you Christians that sit and go, oh yeah, so the Bible will tell us what's good and who is good enough. And that's not good news, people. Let me just tell you. When you sit there and say, well, we just need to go to the Bible, you don't want to go there to look for what is good and who is good enough, right? It's not, the Bible is not, going to the Bible as the source is not good for people who don't have access to the Bible. And there's people around the world who don't have access to the Bible. So if you say, well, the Bible, I mean, God tells us what's good, and he's given us the Bible, and the Bible will tell us what is good and who is good enough. Well, first of all, not everybody has one of those, so that becomes a problem. Secondly, before Moses, like in the Old Testament, nobody had written Bibles. They didn't have the written code, right? Before Moses, they didn't have the rules. And so that means none of those people knew what was good and what was good enough, right? They didn't have any version of that. And then whenever you get to the Old Testament in the Bible, it doesn't even have a theology of heaven. So when you look at the people in the Old Testament, if they were doing good, it wasn't to go to heaven because they didn't really have an understanding of that. There was this place called Sheol, and you would just kind of die and sit there. It was a place of darkness. It was a place of mystery, and there's just ambiguity, and nobody knew. And so you weren't like, say, I can't wait to get to Sheol. It's just like, I'm just going to end up there, and who knows whatever happens after that. So there's really no theology or understanding or comprehension of heaven in the Old Testament. By the time you get to the New Testament, right, and everybody's going, oh, this is what heaven's like, and they got visions, and they've got revelations, and it's beautiful, and it's wonderful, and all that. Yeah, the New Testament gives us great descriptions of heaven, but the New Testament says nobody's good enough to get there. So yes, God, He determines it, and He discloses it in the Bible. But here's what the Bible says. There is no one righteous, not even one. And it goes on and says, and there is no one who does good, meaning does good consistently. Not even one. This word righteous, throughout the Bible, the word righteous is kind of used as the word, acceptable. When we say somebody is righteous, they're acceptable. And we're all striving to be acceptable. Acceptable to our friends, to our society, acceptable as far as, academically or intellectually, acceptable financially, keeping up with Joneses, whatever. We're all striving to be acceptable. And he would say, there is no one acceptable, not even one. Why? Because there's no one who consistently does good, not even one. Paul goes on and says this. Therefore, no one will be declared righteous or acceptable in God's sight by the works of the law. The one who defines good and the one who discloses good and says, none of you live up to it. No, none of you. Now realize this is written by the Apostle Paul, who devoted the first part of his life to knowing what is good according to God's definition, and then doing what is good as far as all the outward behaviors. He was a Pharisee. He was a religious leader who devoted himself to knowing what is good by God's definition and doing what is good. And he bragged about it and boasted about it, and he was better than everybody else, and yet realized he wasn't good enough. And he could never be good enough. And so the law is there to reveal just how bad we are. Because the moment you see, come on, 10 Commandments. Everybody's like, well, I believe in the 10 Commandments. You can't quote 3 of them, right? Or all you can quote is 3 of them. That's all you know. But we'd say we got to live by the 10 Commandments. And then whenever we say them and look at them, we sit there and go, oh, I believe in those. I've broken most of them. Right? And so he sits there and says, I'm trying to live by this and uphold this. And even at his best, he could not do it. Saying we have a Bible, and we give a Bible to people who are trying to make it to heaven. It would be like a helicopter coming over the middle of the ocean with the people who are sitting out there trying to swim to shore. They don't know what direction to go. And so what you do is you drop them a map and a swimming manual on how to swim better. And you leave. All the map does and all the manual does is reveal to them how hopeless they are. Because you can't swim enough. Right? And knowing which direction you're going to go doesn't really help. You see, Paul, as a Pharisee, he could swim better than all the other swimmers. But he realized he was actually swimming in the wrong direction, and even at his best, he wasn't good enough. That's why he goes on and writes this. There's no difference between the Jew and the Gentile. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Jew and Gentile, what's the difference? Okay, the Jewish people and the non-Jewish people. He said, listen, all the Jewish people, you got the laws of Moses, you got the rules, you've got the swimmer's manual. And you grew up in a family of swimmers, Olympic swimmers. You have been trained from birth how to swim. Those Gentiles, they don't even know how to swim. They're terrified of water. They don't have the manual. It doesn't matter if you got the rules or if you don't have the rules. It doesn't matter if you were raised in it or not raised in it. All of us fall short of, and here's the standard of goodness, God. God reveals, God is love, God is like good, and God is perfect, and God is holy, and all those things we associate with God. And he says, I am the standard. And so the Jews had the rules, the Gentiles didn't have the rules, but it didn't matter. Jews could swim farther than Gentiles from the middle of the ocean. Nobody made it to shore, right? Because even the most observant Jew was not good enough. You see, that is the standard, isn't it? God is the standard of good. Here's what it says in the beginning of that Bible. We're all made in his image to reflect him and to be like him, and he is the standard. He is the standard of honesty and integrity and love and how we treat one another, right? To the core of our thoughts and our desires and our intentions. I mean, he is the standard, right? And here's the thing. It's really not fair because God puts himself as a standard and he's incomprehensible, right? He's incomprehensible and his standard is unattainable. It's outside of reach. I mean, in that same Bible, Isaiah, the prophet, says this: God's thoughts are not our thoughts, his ways are not our ways. They are so much higher than our thoughts, so much higher than our ways. They are so far out there, and yet that's the standard, and I can't even comprehend it. Can't even wrap my mind around it, can't even relate to it. Then Jesus comes on the scene and says, be perfect, just as your heavenly Father is perfect. That's the standard? And he's like, yeah. That's the standard. And you're like, okay, now listen, I can't comprehend God, but Jesus, a little more relatable. That's why we focus on Jesus, right? God in flesh comes to us among humanity. I can relate to Jesus. But don't you agree? Even trying to relate to Jesus, the standard of being like Jesus is still outside of reach. It's like, well, I'm not Jesus. No, you're not, obviously. And if, well, we ought to be more like Jesus. I'm trying to, but isn't it still seemingly out of reach? Especially when Jesus comes in and says, oh, you've heard about all the sins that are behaviors. I'm telling you, if you even think about it. And you're like, what? That even my thought life is somehow being graded and evaluated? Let me ask you this. What do you call a boss? Okay? What do you call a boss who expects perfection every time, but he has unachievable standards? What do you call that boss? You call him your boss, right? No, you call him like not good. In fact, you might call him a lot of names. Good is not one of them. You would say it's a horrible boss. Demands perfection, but sets a standard that is unachievable, and yet judges me by it. That's a horrible boss. What would you call a teacher who doesn't give like grades? It's all 100s or you fail. Every time. Every time. It's 100 on everything or you fail. You would say that's not a good teacher. You would run from that boss and from that teacher. You see, so this idea that good people go to heaven is not in the Bible. In fact, the Bible tells us quite differently. The idea that good people go to heaven was refuted by Jesus. Like, this is what Jesus says in the great Sermon on the Mount. He says, for I tell you, unless your righteousness, your acceptability, right? Unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, the ones who have memorized it, devoted themselves to it, and have devoted themselves to living it out, and they do it with such precision. This was the best people that everybody knew. In the Jewish world, this was the elite. These were the elite swimmers in the ocean of good, right? Unless it surpasses them, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. They're the best among us, and they're not getting there, so you got to be better than them. And everybody would go, well, just quit trying. Just quit trying. I mean, come on, right? Then Jesus also said this, to the man on the cross, a criminal. Jesus answered him, the criminal on the cross. Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. So here we go. We've got this criminal on the cross who cannot do good, who cannot undo what he's done. He can't make up for anything. And Jesus gives him the promise that he gets to go to heaven. But meanwhile, he tells all the religious leaders and the Pharisees and he tells all of them they are not good enough to go to heaven. He also says this. He says, when you look at all of, in fact, he will say that not only do good people not go to heaven, Jesus says bad people go to heaven. Because this criminal on the cross was guilty. And he was a bad person. This criminal on the cross was a terrible person. Committed murder, insurrection. And yet Jesus says you get to go to heaven. And then he said to all of the people out there, when he's talking about the Pharisees and the religious leaders, the Pharisees and those religious leaders came to Jesus one time to trap him. And here's what he said. He said, you don't realize that tax collectors and prostitutes are getting into heaven, or the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, ahead of you. Like bad people are getting in and the good people are missing out. And so Jesus refutes this idea that good people go to heaven. Completely destroys it. And so here we're left with our notion, oh, they're such a good person. Surely they would, because here's the thing, if they were good enough for us, surely they're good enough for heaven. And if I'm good enough for myself, for others, surely I'm good enough for heaven. And it doesn't even work that way. So you don't want to be evaluated on your goodness. Now listen, goodness matters. Goodness matters. And goodness will make a difference in some ways. It's just goodness isn't enough. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. You see, when people are in the water and they're drowning, and the ocean is too far away, they don't need a manual. You don't need to come in here and listen to me give you instructions on how to swim better, which is a lot of times what we do. You see, they don't need a rule book. They don't need regulations. They don't need a reference manual on how to live better and do better. All that matters, we're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks, okay? Don't run out of here hearing what I'm not saying. I'm just saying in that situation, none of those things really help. You know what you need? A rescue. You need a rescue. You need someone who comes to you in the middle of the ocean and rescues you. You see, the Bible doesn't give us a standard, and the Bible doesn't give us a system that would make us good enough. The Bible points us to a Savior who came to rescue us. And now you have to decide, are you going to keep trusting in your goodness, or are you going to trust in the Savior? More on that next week. Don't miss next week. For today, here's what I want for you. Stop trusting in your goodness. Stop trusting in your goodness and comforting in yourself that, hey, you're doing good and you're being better. Again, that matters and that's important. It's especially important to your family. It's important to the people around you. It's important to our world. It's important to our culture. I mean, there's so much there. But stop trusting in your goodness to get you to heaven. Because as long as you trust in your goodness, you will live in fear of not being good enough. And it will torment you. It will torment you every time you make a mistake, every time you do something wrong. Stop trusting in your goodness or you will live in fear. Here's the other thing. Stop trusting in your goodness or you will just keep comparing. Well, at least I'm better than them. I'm not as bad as that. Oh my goodness. I'm nowhere as good as them. And they're in, I'm out. Again, it will just eat at us and destroy us. As long as you as long as you trust in your goodness, it will be easy for people like me to control you. By telling you when you're good enough, not good enough, according to some standard that we have developed.